tell us a little bit about you and what you do for Microsoft.
Yeah, so good afternoon. Thank you first and foremost to you for inviting me to speak today. I'm very excited to share some of our learnings with the audience. But my name is Valeria Teran, and I work for Microsoft. I have about 15 years of experience in the power and utility space. I've been at Microsoft for about 5 years now within their energy team. And so why does Microsoft have an energy team? For those who might not know, essentially my work is to make sure that we can connect our data centers to the grid. Everything early on from due diligence when we're identifying sites, helping the business understand how large of a data center they can develop, the costs, risks that go into that. And then through the execution phase and well into operations, for example, understanding what our electric rates are going to be, because that is a very massive portion of our operating expenses once we're up and running. And so before I was at Microsoft, I actually spent some time at Calpine as well. That's a name that's come up earlier today. I also have some consulting experience in power and utilities. Outside of work, I have 3 wonderful young little girls that keep us very busy. And I'm not a local Houstonian, but I've been here for about 10 years. So very, very happy to be part of this broader community.
Well, thank you very much. When I saw Valeria's, we were working with Microsoft trying to figure out who could we get to come kind of talk to this, and then I saw her bio and I was like, okay, that's the one. That's the one, exactly what we need right there. So thank you so much for coming and being with us. And Mansur, give us your title and a little bit about what you're doing at NRG.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Mansur Masood. I've been with NRG for 14 years now. I'm a senior director on the data center origination side. It was a group that was created about 3 years ago, and I was, I guess, employee number 1 there, just because I...
Again, kind of spot on for the guy that we needed for this conversation. So appreciate y'all participating in that.
For sure.
Good. All right, well, let's jump right in. Let's kind of start at 30,000 feet. And Valeria, I'll start with you. Kind of why we're here, why this moment really matters. So Texas, specifically the U.S., but Texas is experiencing, obviously, electricity demand growth unlike anything we've seen for decades, really, driven in large part by AI and digital infrastructure. From your perspective, though, what's fundamentally changing, and why is it happening right now? So we'll start at a very high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess hopefully many of you for the last couple of years have seen a lot of headlines about this AI craze. And so I'm happy to unpack that a little bit. But to put things in perspective, in the last few years, the data center industry has probably entered into service the same amount of capacity of data center that it did in the prior 10 years. And going forward, the forecasts are a little bit all over the place, but within the next 5 years, we will be adding, hopefully hundreds of gigawatts of capacity to the U.S. grid. Within ERCOT alone, I believe some of the estimates range anywhere from 140 gigawatts through to 320 gigawatts. That's a huge range, which just helps you understand the amount of uncertainty in terms of what the growth will actually be. And so there are obviously a lot of physical elements that need to go into that to really support this growth. And so from the data center industry side, what that means is that, whether you are what we call a hyperscaler, like the Microsofts, Amazons, Googles, or whether you are a developer, even a smaller developer, what that means is that even if you have, call it unlimited time and resources and money to throw at the problem, there are so many moving pieces that just cannot keep up with the demand growth and the speed that we need to deliver this capacity. And so it's all become a story about speed. Speed is everything that really will attract a data center project to one geography versus another, and how do we achieve speed and scale is also a differentiator now. It comes down to the local level, right? What are the permitting processes? How quickly can we secure that? What's the state of the existing infrastructure? And it's really just pushing the limits from every kind of discipline within these hyperscalers.
And that's clearly changed the strategy that y'all have used to kind of get to market, right, over the last several years.
Yes, absolutely. It's the emphasis is all on how quickly and how big. It's not what is it going to cost.
Wow. Okay, you hear construction companies. Did y'all just hear that line she said? All right, kind of staying again at the 30,000 foot level, and Valeria, I'll stay with you for this. So explain the importance of data centers to the audience. Instead of a lot of people, there's a lot of information out there right now. Obviously, our governor is making declarations a week or so ago. But what do data centers mean to us? And then, other than, hey, that's a large building with a lot of servers in it, right? What's the general importance of data centers? This is probably a pretty educated crowd, but let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that data centers are very much critical infrastructure in the way that we think about things. To put things in perspective, if you were ever to experience a data center outage, you would very quickly find out because it powers everything from your mobile banking to your GPS, in some cases 911 services, all healthcare systems. So it really, there are so many critical functions that we rely on everyday life that are powered by data centers. But even beyond that, I would say they're economic growth engines because, as I mentioned earlier, there are so many moving parts into data centers, and that is possible because of all of the tangential industries that we rely on.
I don't want to jump down a rabbit hole, but you touched on something that I'm going to ask you a quick off-schedule question. So data center interruptions, or a data center that goes down, right? The ramifications of that are pretty impactful and extreme. If you can, talk real briefly at a high level about the redundancy to keep data centers from going offline.
Yeah, so that's pretty much right up my alley. But I think the broader crowd probably has some experience in designing redundant systems. But basically, we don't just try to connect a data center to the grid. We kind of double all of the infrastructure that would be needed to that. So we make sure that if one power line goes down, we have a secondary power line with the same capacity to keep the data center running. We have multiple transformers that are there just for redundancy. We also have usually backup generators that one for one will match the capacity of what we're building because for us, a data center going down has extreme ramifications to our clients at the end of the day. So we aim to have 99.999% uptime, which is called, that's, if you ever hear the term 5 nines, that's where it comes from.
5 nines.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to remember that one. All right, thank you. So that's a good kind of segue into the entire conversation. So let's talk about energy supply and infrastructure, powering the AI. So Mansur, NRG has announced significant investments in new dispatchable energy, including 3 facilities kind of on our side of the town here recently, totaling somewhere over $1.5 billion. What gave NRG the confidence that drove that decision that now is the right time to make those investments?
Yeah, so the thesis was always there. There was always population growth. There was always, increase in industry. So the rate of growth had always been there, pretty steady at 1.7%. And so what gave us the confidence was that load growth was already there. There's already demand, and you had 85 gigawatts of summer peak load that's already appearing. And so the best thing to do was build more generation, because with this AI coming online, even cloud is still growing. So give us the confidence that, hey, we should continue the investment here, because the baseline demand was just based on population growth and industries, because Texas is very favorable, just business climate. So that growth is already there. And then on top of that, we have our own retail book of business and wholesale book of business. So we still have our customers as their own backstop for building that generation as well. So it's the right time.
Yeah, and in our footprint along the Houston Ship Channel, that power generation, that dispatchability is also critically important for our petrochemical manufacturing facilities, right? Which has seen once in a lifetime growth over the last 15 years. We're in a little bit of a trough right now, but I think some of the things happening around the world, we're fixing to see additional production come online or projects be announced over the next year as we begin to again be kind of the home for the world's specialty chemicals and resins and polymers that now have been cut off because of disruptions on the other side of the world. So we love the AI data centers. Always keep in mind that we also love our petrochemical manufacturing, and we want to keep that at the top of your priority list as well.
Absolutely, and to Valeria's point on the number of gigawatts that are in queue, even if the number was 320 gigawatts, even if you realize let's call it 1% of that, that's 3 gigawatts on top of the 80, 85, 86 that we talked about. So any bit of generation is welcome on the grid, because even if a fraction of it appears, where we don't want to experience a shortfall.
Absolutely. So kind of diving down that rabbit hole then. So when large customers need power today, what is your biggest challenge? Is it the generation, transmission, permitting, speed to market?
Speed.
Excellent.
That's it. It's the name of the game.
Wow.
And speed and reliability. So can I get reliable power? And Valeria and I kind of live parallel lives. I work for NRG and she's with Microsoft, but the job description's ultimately very similar. It's how do you get power and how do you get grid interconnection, how do you get it fast as you can, and how can you build more power plants as fast as you can.
So to the speed point, recently y'all have announced these 3 projects, right? We were kind of blessed to work on the one on the north side of our ship channel and helped with some state or local school district incentives on the tax side. What is kind of the estimate to generation for if you can talk to all 3 of them?
The timelines?
Yeah, timeline for these.
3 to 4 years, and that's if you have the turbines and the slots reserved. You've got GE, you've got Mitsubishi's, you've got all these different types of turbines, but you have to have the slots, you have the reservations, which NRG has. And at the same time, you have to have the manpower and the workforce and the capital to build all that. So 3 to 4 years from when you have those turbines reserved.
Yeah, and that's we always kind of like, and I'm looking for Chad Carson, I see him back in the back there, but on a lot of our projects, from time to announce to time to online or production can often be 2 years, 3 years, even 4 years out, depending on what the specifics are of that project. We also had the privilege of touring one of our local OEM turbine manufacturer / maintenance people this last week, and had a good conversation with Jim about that a while ago. But the ability to manufacture the parts that are going into your facilities are just it's as high tech as it gets, right? And the demand and try, like you say, to get a slot to get in there to get your stuff built and the timeline that you wanted is also it's an entire game, right? To be able to do that. So.
Yeah, and that all started with the .com bubble, and there were failures in the whole supply chain, and they overbuilt, and so people got smarter. But the unfortunate thing is, like, the demand is now real, and so how do you catch that up, and how do you make sure it's not vaporware that's being advertised for some of these data centers?
Exactly. All right, so let's talk a little bit about site selection, regional competitiveness. I had conversations with many people in the audience before, and we were talking about different spots in the country, different spots in Texas. Let's talk a little bit about that competition. So Valeria, when Microsoft evaluates locations for a new data center, what characteristics make a community stand out? What makes a preferential location?
Yeah, so I touched on this a bit earlier today, but it's essentially all the strategy that goes into how quickly can we make a project real locally, right? So not just obviously understanding the local permitting processes, but how quickly can they actually work? What is the workforce readiness sometimes of the local community, right? Everything from construction to engineering and everything that would go to support the data center development, honestly. Infrastructure readiness, as I mentioned, so what is the state of the local power infrastructure? Can it withstand the scale that we're looking to build, or is there a ton of work that's required because all of that ends up adding time in our ability to energize? And the strength of the local partnerships is really critical for us as well. The economic development entities locally, the local governments, the utilities. I would say that really kind of not makes or breaks the projects, but I think it really enables a project to really take form more quickly. I would say some of our largest and most strategic projects around the country have really come from, a conversation of, hey, why don't you have a look at this land that we have here? It has all of this infrastructure ready to go. It's buildable. There's more of it if you need to grow beyond that. And so I will leave you with the emphasis on local partnerships.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell this story. I was talking to somebody before. We at one of our local communities, city manager, we've known and worked with really well for a long time, and he came to us. He said, "Hey, Chad, we've got this brownfield site. We're considering a couple of different manufacturing types of things, but we're also getting interest in the data center. And boy, would we love to have the data center come there, right? It had huge feed from natural gas. It had a substation co-located there. It had all kinds of great benefits." And I was like, yes. So we were very excited to try and do that. And yesterday in the paper, this was like 4 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And yesterday in the Chronicle, we see an article about how the local community is not on board, but the city was like, this is what we need. So that leads me to my next question, right? So what economic benefits do these data center investments bring to a local community, right?
Yes. So I cannot understate how much of a jobs multiplier data centers are. Obviously, I keep touching on the construction phase of that, but the amount of trades that we need on site, especially now at the scale that we're talking of data centers, it is massive. One of the projects that I manage is, I'll say, a few gigawatts large, and every time you go visit the site, it is a village of people that are there every single day, and there's so much traffic on the site from all the crews trying to get around there. And so that is just during the construction phase, but where you're building one project, if possible, usually there will be more to follow. So that is actually a multi-year timeline of constant flow of construction. We cannot get enough, electrician, pipe fitters, all of these different specific trades that we really need to develop. But there's all, maybe more relevant to the broader crowd here today, there are all of these tangential industries that are also benefiting, right? So all of these equipment manufacturers, they don't have to be physically on site, but we really heavily depend on them in our supply chain to actually build the data center. And so, we end up working with those companies to see if we can help them expand their factory capacity. How can we invest in their skilling? There's a lot of local community investment as well that tends to follow a data center project. Obviously, we help prop up local businesses through the increased foot traffic that comes locally, restaurants, hotels. There's just endless opportunities there.
There really is, and I think I mentioned it to Jim. I hope you met Jim Griffin, who basically runs this facility here. But Valeria is very interested in touring the training facility afterwards. So I know that that's going to be, it's a phenomenal facility. And I see a bunch of questions coming in, so thank you all very much. We'll try and get to those. I will mention this too. So to that point, to the point of all of those benefits to our local communities, I would say this to this crowd, okay? Let's get the messaging right on what data centers mean in a positive aspect to our local communities. I had the privilege of sitting in a meeting, and I know Cindy's here from Dr. Bonin's office, with the speaker and his chairs. And the main thing that they said was, we have to educate our communities properly so that they understand that supporting these types of projects are good for them, they're good for Texas' economy, they're good for our state. So it's that messaging that I really wanted to make sure that we're all taking back to our communities, to our neighbors, to our families, to understand the positive impacts that data centers can bring to this state. Mansur, I'll flip it over to you. What are your largest customers asking for today that they weren't asking for just a few years ago when it comes to kind of competitiveness?
Yeah, it goes back to the speed to market. They're looking for speed to power and reliable power. The 5 nines is a thing. So they didn't ask for that. It was basically, when can I get power? I'll let you know when the meter is charged, and then you can supply me with a contract for, block and index or whatever it is on the retail side. But now it's, hey, I need physical power. Help me figure out what the ramp is, and let's be in a partnership here, as opposed to historically the customers would tell us when they were ready, but now it's more of it's a collaborative solution-making exercise.
Yeah. Okay, so let's switch over to partnerships that make this gross, and Mansur, I'll stay with you. So what role do partnerships among utilities, the policymakers we just talked about, customers, power providers, how does that network play in meeting this common surge in electrical demand?
Yeah, it's hypercritical at this point. It starts with policy, right? Policy in terms of, can we get the power on the grid and can we keep it reliable? And then you have the utilities that haven't seen this type of demand ever. Like, they've never seen it. So now they have transmission infrastructure that they need to upgrade. And so they're making sure that data centers can come online or large loads can come online without compromising reliability to the customers. And then there's the generation companies that, like NRG and retail providers that are trying to make sure that, hey, can we actually build the power solution closer to where the loads are, so that maybe there's less transmission upgrades needed. So I think at this point it's been maybe 2 years and people starting to formulate the strategies, because right now it was like individual verticals like policy making, and then there's IPPs, and then there's the utility companies. But now they're starting to get, they're starting to talk. There's starting to be some
cross communication there.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good, very good. And Valeria, what role do partnerships with the utilities, energy providers, and local governments play? You touched on this a little bit, but how does that all work together to enable responsible growth?
I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more on that. I think the key is that it's not just important for how we enter a market, but they're really constant evolution of these partnerships, right? Because data centers are long-term investments in a community and a contributor there. And so, it's not just initially making introductions and, talking to the local authorities, how do I get my permits? It's continuously educating them. They sometimes are the front-facing, they're front-facing with the public, right? And they have a role of educating the public as well of the benefits of data centers. But, with utilities, it's really critical in terms of how do we get this right? How do we design it properly? I see a question here on the screen around like the implications of, power prices and all that. So, utilities, in my space are running into a lot of these, I would say, kind of public policy debates as well as data centers are, because really it's changing not just how we develop projects, but really the implications of developing projects this large. It requires a thinking to break away from the status quo. You're really kind of creating these more kind of complex and sophisticated solutions to really enable that speed and scale.
Very good. I am going to flip over to a question that I see here. I kind of like it, and I probably should have had this in there in our questions. When will data centers be co-located with petrochemical manufacturing to jointly benefit from the power, water, heat exchange synergies within that facility? I glance over at my buddy Cam from Chevron, so I know they've got a nice project with you guys out in West Texas, I think. But how about co-locating a data center inside one of our facilities where they're already generating power? I know Calpine's got a nice facility at Shell or in Pemex, so we could make that all work right there. Not going to happen? It's going to happen?
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. With the right,
I'm sorry. I'll go back to I mean, some of that is happening. Obviously, there's a lot of synergies, but in my opinion, when you're seeing some of these really large-scale behind-the-meter projects, the sell is because it is quicker than connecting to the grid, right? And so what's been really interesting kind of in West Texas in particular is, those petrochemical companies don't only have a long history there, but they have a lot of land rights. They have all of this infrastructure built out to serve their operations. And so it kind of, you already have laid the groundwork for developing large-scale projects. So it's kind of interesting to see that's coming together, but usually it is that we can get something large up and running sooner rather than
I kind of
later
like that. It's Texas. We controlled the cattle market, and then the cotton market, and then the oil and gas market, and now we just roll right in. We did the wind market. We're the number one wind producer of electricity, and now we just roll right into data centers because we can do that here in Texas, right? So that's the message. Let's flip over to workforce a little bit. We talked a little bit about workforce, but we're sitting here in a world-class training facility as we speak. What are the workforce skills? And you touched on this a little bit that are most critical for that infrastructure construction, that data center construction. Go ahead.
So I really can't underscore enough how we need as many trades as possible because it's not just data centers themselves that are more or less competing for labor, but it is all of the companies that need to also build out their infrastructure to support that data center growth. So again, I work mostly with utilities. So if a utility needs to build out new power plants worth of capacity and transmission lines, if you think about it, they're kind of competing for the same labor. Ironically, that same data center, the labor that is being attracted to that same data center. And so we have continued to put a lot of emphasis and focus on how we can continue to develop the next generation of workforce and make sure that, that there's enough resourcing because there's just not enough to go around.
Yeah. And Mansur, I'll let you touch on this one. So the power generation and the data centers both really sit at the intersection of technology, energy production, engineering, real estate, even policy like we talked about. How do y'all lead across such a diverse ecosystem?
You need a lot of different trained individuals. Like myself, I didn't get to go into my background, but I actually started off as a municipal engineer about 20 years ago. And then I wound up being a water utilities engineer and a treatment engineer. And then I wound up on the oil and gas side doing boiler conversions. And then somehow I landed into the large load data center space, which combined every single discipline. So right place at the right time. Now on teams that I have, that I operate at NRG, we have different electrical engineers, we have civil engineers, mechanical engineers, we have power trading experts. So, and we have real estate people on staff as well. So it's kind of a conglomeration of finding the right folks. You're not going to have a like-for-like translation, but if you can find trades that are close enough to what the disciplines that the data center space requires, which is power gen, real estate, and data centers themselves, that's kind of how you equip now. The hope is that there's trades in this space where they can maintain and operate power gen, and then same thing on the data center side to kind of promote those in the community and those disciplines.
Yeah. So kind of on that line, I'll take another question from the audience here about there are a lot of general contractors and engineering firms, construction firms here. So what's the path, or what is that path for GCs to work directly with a Microsoft or NRG on the construction phase? Call Valeria.
Yeah, you come find me after, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
I wasn't really going to put you on the spot, but y'all just heard her, right? She could.
I think for NRG, being in proximity to either power plants or within our earshot of our brownfield development sites goes a long way. Having adhered to a good safety record, safety standards, Again, you can find me after this as well. So we can get into that, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And that's one of the things that we try and do here is a little bit of networking, connectivity, and try and help our companies at least know the pathway to try and get into some good business.
Yeah, one more thing was just familiarity with the utility requirements, because a lot of these data centers, like, there's vendors that just understand what the utility needs and gets it to them before they're even asked, and that goes a super long way for NRG.
Yeah, and I'll pose this one to both y'all, and this one we heard in our committee meetings about an area that is prone to natural disaster disruptions. Does it really make sense or how much sense does it make to locate these data centers in our footprint? I mean, we obviously are home to the world's largest petrochemical complex. We know how to do business in the rain and wind, but how does that play into kind of, again, the decision of location here kind of on the Gulf Coast, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And so I mentioned—
I thought of that one myself.
I'll say that this is probably one of those things that has really changed in the last couple of years. I recall when I started at Microsoft, I cannot tell you how many conversations we would have where somebody had actually evaluated the geological risks and used that as part of the decision-making factor of whether we build, put hundreds of millions or sometimes billions of dollars into a specific site. Obviously, Houston is prone, unfortunately, to hurricanes, and so that's not, I guess, a factor for is where I put it, but I think a lot of those things have kind of gone out the window now because, as I said, if you have the fundamentals there, and that is access to land, power, and the key ecosystem that you really need to stand up a data center, might just squint your eyes a little bit.
Exactly. We do have the workforce, I think, here. We've got that advantage, I know.
Yeah, there's always a way to harden the infrastructure as well, right? So.
Mansur, does that play into? I mean, y'all are just following the power and the demand, right? I mean,
yeah, and it did early on. Maybe when this first started, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it played a part. And now there's no like secondary or tertiary markets, right? Like those kind of dissolved. You've got obviously everyone would talk about Dallas, but now Houston's been in the equation, and so. It was, but now because power and speed to market's like the main driver, you can design around some of those provisions around hurricanes and egress, ingress, things like that.
Valeria, I like the way you said that we just kind of squint and keep going. One more quick question, and then I'll kind of go to a last one. But this one's come up in some good conversations too. Do you foresee any small nuclear reactors as viable, solutions to power behind the meter? I know, again, speed and cost, but mostly speed right now. So how does that play into it in the future here?
Yeah, I mean, I know that small modular nuclear reactors have also been in the news a lot lately. I think they're making really good progress, but I would say I don't know that I see them in the near future. I guess it depends how you define that. But, in the next maybe 5-10 years horizon, probably, I don't know if behind the meter, but they will definitely be hopefully part of the equation for more carbon-free resources.
Certainly. We're just very blessed with natural gas right now. Okay, so let's close with a final question. We'll give way to our second panel, but Mansur, I'll start with you. Kind of in one sentence, what gives you the most optimism about the future of AI and power generation and economic growth?
I want to say ChatGPT. I like ChatGPT. Makes my work.
That is the driver, right? That is the driver. Yeah. That is the driver. Very good. So Valeria, very similar. If you could leave the audience with one message about the role of data centers and AI era, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that hopefully you all are pro data centers, but I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. So I think in terms of an optimistic takeaway, there's a lot to look forward to in this country. There will hopefully be continued economic growth, and that because of all the dependencies that it has in secondary businesses, hopefully, that will spill over as well. And so it's not a matter of if and when, it's just how fast and how much can you get.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, pretty insightful conversation, folks. How about a big round of applause for Mansur and Valeria? So.